everyone, and very warm welcome to our June 2023 session of Employee Center Academy. Many of you on the call are dialing in from all over the world, so very warm welcome, and many of you are joining us for the first time. So I'm going to start by just giving you a quick rundown of what to expect in Employee Center Academies. So Employee Center Academies are actually sessions created by the product team for you, that is our customers and our partners, to come and ask your questions and interact directly with the product team. We bring in experts every month from all over our product teams to come and present. And this is not just a presentation. We configure the product live. We take technical questions. We discuss use cases and make sure you are getting all your questions answered. And we do this monthly. So the thumb rule is every third Wednesday of a month, we will have a session on Employee Center Academy. You can enroll for these via community. We will share the link for it on chat. And once you're enrolled for one session, you are enrolled for the entire series. So you should be able to see the next session in your calendar already. Our next one is going to be on July 19th. Now, in terms of logistics, please do use the Q&A panel for asking your questions. We have a chat and we love to interact with all of you on the call, and we would love to see you interact with others on the call as well. But use the chat for that and keep your questions to the Q&A panel because the panelists are not monitoring the chat for questions. So if you want it to be answered, put it on Q&A panel. And the slides and video recording for this session will be shared. In fact, the slides are now live on the event page, which you can see, the link for which you can see on the chat. So if you want to get the slide now, you can go and get it from the link shared on chat. And the video will be available in just a couple of days or so on YouTube, as well as on the event page. We have a really fun topic today to get started. It is integrations that Employee Center has with conversational interfaces like Microsoft Teams. And we will dive deep to talk a little bit more about how to configure the Microsoft Teams integration and best practices around it. So that's our topic, and we have two speakers. One is me. My name is Pooja Gupta. I'm your host for Employee Center Academy sessions. So you would see me consistently almost in all Employee Center Academy sessions. And I'm joined by an esteemed guest, Asif, who is from our Microsoft Integrations product team and is the SME or subject matter expert who will be taking us through the Microsoft integrations. Asif, you want to just say hi and add to that introduction?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pooja, for inviting me to this. I'm so excited to be here and talk about the Microsoft integration, especially with the focus on Employee Center.
Awesome. Thank you, Asif. So in this session today, we will cover just a brief introduction on what are the pre-built integrations we have. So of course, Microsoft Teams is one, but that's not the only one that we have. So I'll walk you through what are the others and what you would get in each. And then we will dive super deep into the Microsoft Teams integration. And I'll hand it over to Asif to give us an overview of the integration and also walk us through the configuration steps and best practices around it. The Q&A will be throughout the session. So there's no dedicated time. Please put your Q&A questions in the panel, and we will pause throughout the presentation to take those questions. Now, we always get questions which are on how do I deploy Employee Center? How do I migrate? How do I do taxonomy? So before we dive deep into the topic for today, I wanted to give you some resources, and please make sure you have access to this via the slide link that is shared on the chat. These resources are the place where you will get answers to this. In the session today, we are not covering what is Employee Center, how do I migrate, how other things associated with Employee Center. We are going to be focused on the integration with conversational interfaces. So please keep your questions limited to that topic. Community Product Hub is a great place to get resources on any of the other questions that you have. You can see the link for it on chat. We also have deployment office hours. So if you are currently in the process of deploying Employee Center, you have questions on how to do X or how to do taxonomy, for example, this would be a good session. This is again a direct connection with product and engineering team. We do it every month and it's a purely Q&A session. So no presentation at all. I sometimes bring slides, but it is just like, let's just get into your questions. And our next session is next week on June 27th. You can register it via the link that is shared on chat, or you can just use the QR code from this slide. Taxonomy is a common question that we get. So how do we best practices around it? So you can see some resources highlighted in the slide over here. I won't spend too much time here, but just wanted to point out there's a lot that you can use. Similarly, for like migrating from the legacy, like the old /SP portal, the /service portal to Employee Center, there's a lot of resources for that. And then there's more around training, and like for self-implementing, we also have Now Create. Again, all these links will be available to you via the slides and the chat. So without further wait, let's get into our topic, the pre-built integrations with conversational interfaces. And let's start with why. Why do we want to care, or why do we want to have integrations with conversational interfaces? Based on our research and research from other sources, we have learned that employees are wasting a lot of time navigating from one tool to the other tool, one application to the other application, and they literally lose out on being productive. And on an average, in small to medium-sized organizations itself, there are more than 180 applications deployed. 9% of time that employees have is spent between switching systems. Nearly 1,200 transactions per app, transitions, I'm sorry, per app. And this confusing application switching, it is confusing because each of these applications offer a different experience. So every time you switch, you have to not just get out and like get back into the movement of that application. You are also learning to operate or deal with a completely new, different UI. So like it's significant enough in terms of loss of productivity. And if you were to quantify, on an average, 5 hours are lost every week, which is quite a lot. So the solution that we, from a ServiceNow standpoint, that we've been talking about, and Employee Center is all about that, is creating a modern employee experience platform, one that is unifying all the different things that you're doing from a ServiceNow perspective, creating a front end that is very much for the employee, but is also omni-channel. So if you would see the top green layer here, one, it is being the front end, but at the same time, the most important aspect of that green layer is that experience is consistent when you move from a portal experience to a mobile experience to even conversations like, conversational interfaces like Teams, Slack, email. And that is what we're going to focus on. The main idea is that it's consistent, and it is also that it is meeting where users are. So users should not have to switch away from the interface or the channel that they're using to get things done. And you would see this theme across all our integrations. And this page sort of summarizes all the different integrations that we have. So our first set of integrations are pretty deep in actually embedding Employee Center into the other applications. And you would see that across our Office 365 applications. So Microsoft Teams, which is what we will focus on. And we also have like Employee Center embedded in Outlook and Office via our Innovation Hub. And Along with Office 365, recently we also announced Employee Center being embedded in Zoom applications. And that you can see the screenshot, the bottom right screenshot is for Employee Center being completely embedded in Zoom. Now, when I say Employee Center embedded, it literally is Employee Center embedded. You don't have to rebuild a Teams version or a Zoom version of it. It's the same portal, but it opens inside the the team or Zoom as its own page within it. And you can do everything that you could do in the browser view directly from being within the Teams. And when Asif will get to it, he'll talk a lot more. From a Microsoft perspective, we also have Employee Center integrated with Microsoft Viva. So if you have questions on that, feel free to post. But I just wanted to highlight for those of you who are investing in Microsoft Viva, we also have an integration with that interface. Now, one aspect is taking Employee Center and embedding Employee Center into conversational interfaces. We have also been investing into making those interfaces more embedded within Employee Center or available within Employee Center. And the perfect example for this is we show Teams presence in Employee Center. So if you're on Employee Center profile page, you can see if that person that you are viewing the profile of is available on Teams and directly initiate a chat from there. From an agent perspective, also you can initiate a chat or meeting directly from ServiceNow. Last but not the least, the other way that we are meeting where users are through our VA and chatbot experiences. If you are investing in VA, you can actually have VA integrated with Microsoft Teams. It's also available for Slack and SMS interfaces. So yeah, feel free to ask questions on these. This kind of summarizes what we have out of box in terms of integrations with conversational interfaces. If you have any particular question other than these, please put it in Q&A and we'll take it up. I would now like to hand it over to Asif to take us through the Microsoft Teams integrations and delight us all, because I'm really excited about everything that we do with Teams. Asif, over to you.
Pooja, can you just confirm that folks can hear me? I just had an update to my Zscaler, so I'm not sure if people can hear me.
I can hear you. We can hear you.
All right, perfect. Sorry for that embarrassing start. So why don't I share my screen? And let's see. All right, can everybody see my screen? Or Pooja, can you just confirm?
Yep, all good.
Excellent. So, I want to first start off by understanding why ServiceNow for Microsoft. And really this question came up, and the answer to it actually came up by talking to multiple customers. The common theme that really popped up was that organizations like yourself are really pressed to provide both better experiences and more efficiency for their employees. And all of the customers that we've talked to really consider this to be a mission-critical objective. And so when we built the integration, we set out to improve efficiency by seamlessly weaving ServiceNow and Microsoft experiences into natural workspaces. And there are many benefits once you get this seamless experience. First and foremost, your employees are happier. It doesn't feel like ServiceNow or Microsoft Teams. It's a unified experience for both agents and employees. This also increases productivity because the integration between Teams and ServiceNow brings notifications, information, and action into natural workspaces. And finally, it optimizes collaboration. Good things happen when you take world-class collaboration software and weave it with world-class workflow software. So let's go deeper to see how the different stakeholders benefit from this integration. Starting with the CIO. They want to be sure they're maximizing the strategic investments they've made around efficiency, collaboration, and experience. And for the service owners, they want to be able to alert employees to outages and quickly bring experts on a Teams bridge for streamlined collaboration. For agents, they can reach employees and experts directly in Teams from ServiceNow. And for employees, they don't have to leave their natural workspace when it comes to requesting service, finding answers, or providing information back to agents. All of that can be done within Microsoft Teams. So let's talk about how we drive efficiency through experience. There are 5 apps that we have integrations for. For employee experiences, we have first and foremost the Employee Center, which is what we're going to go deeper into today. This is where employees can request service, review tasks, or search the knowledge base directly within Microsoft Teams. And then secondly, they have the virtual agent. And this virtual agent actually is embedded in the Employee Center experience when you consume it through Microsoft Teams. And I'll show that off when I do a demo. For agents and service owners, they have the Service Operations Workspace, which helps agents further reduce MTTR by invoking Teams notifications, conversations, and conferences directly within ServiceNow. And they have Major Incident Management, which helps service owners get services up and running again faster by automating Teams calls within ServiceNow. And then finally, there's Agent to Employee Chat to help enable agents to reach employees directly in Teams from ServiceNow. Again, this is all seamlessly weaving experiences into natural workspaces. And what I mean by this is that employees don't have to leave Microsoft Teams to get the services that they need. And agents don't have to leave ServiceNow to complete workflows and complete tasks that they are assigned. So as I mentioned earlier, let's talk more about Employee Center and Microsoft Teams. First, it's a huge productivity boost for employees. And that's because the vast majority of their work time is spent in Microsoft Teams. We're constantly collaborating with others. And so it just feels natural for me to want to stay in Microsoft Teams to complete a workflow or to request service. And what's great about it is just how natural that all feels. After talking to a manager, I can complete a workflow that is assigned to me. Or maybe I can read on more news on an update that was shared during a company-wide all-hands. All of that can be done inside of Microsoft Teams. I don't have to leave my natural workspace. And Employee Center alone increases self-service. It's a tremendous product. And when it's inside of Microsoft Teams, it's easier to access. And because it's easier to access, you get increased self-service. Okay, one second. Okay, so let's talk about employee communications. When your employees are using Employee Center and Teams, you can get more effective employee communications. The experience is exactly how you imagine it. They receive notifications with brief summaries directly within the activity feed and are taken to Employee Center within Teams when they click on more information. It's a great way to drive more engagement around critical news or even upcoming events. And finally, this is a bilateral experience. It's not just everything inside of Microsoft Teams. You can start with a browser experience. If you're inside of Employee Center on your browser and you're searching and completing workflows and you need to connect with an employee, well, you can see their away statuses, and with the click of a button, you can start a conversation with them. It's really a powerful experience. And what I'd like to do now is actually walk you through how to set up the integration between Employee Center and Microsoft Teams. Now, before I jump into my demo instance, I just want to frame the demo for you. There's going to be 3 steps to this. The first step is to simply connect Teams and ServiceNow. And the second step is going to be that I need to download the ServiceNow generated manifest. And then the third step is to upload that manifest into Microsoft Teams. I'm going to periodically refer back to this slide just so everyone has a frame of reference of what I'm demoing in the context of this overall flow. So let's begin. Okay, so the first step is to ensure that Microsoft Teams and ServiceNow can connect to each other. And to do that, I'm first going to search for ServiceNow for Microsoft Teams, and I'm going to click on this action called Install Azure Apps. And when I do that, it's going to take me to this screen, and you're going to see an option to install the Microsoft Teams connection. When I click on that button, it's going to open up a new tab that is going to prompt me for my authentication. And when it renders, I'm going to select a dedicated role that I have specified for this integration. Let's see, I might need to give it a jump start. Bear with me for just a bit. Okay, let's start again. Okay, so looks like something has happened to my instance. It was acting up a little bit, but luckily I do have a backup here. So let me just walk through the screenshots here. So what I can do is quickly click on that Install Azure Apps. And when I click on the install button, it prompts up my option to select an account. And the second I select an account, it will take me right back to my ServiceNow page, and I can see that it has been installed, and subsequently additional applications have been installed. Okay, so that's step one. Now let me go back to this flow of connecting Teams and ServiceNow, and I'll move on to step two, which is to download the ServiceNow generated manifest. All right, so to download the ServiceNow generated manifest, I'm going to search for ServiceNow for Microsoft Teams. And then under this option of application manifest, I'm going to click on ServiceNow for Teams. When I do that, I'm going to be taken to this page right here. And this is where I get the option to click new. And this starts my workflow of creating the ServiceNow generated manifest. And when I complete this task, I'm going to first specify a version. Since I've done this before, I'm just going to select 1.0.9. But if you're starting from scratch or it's your first time doing this, you'll just start from 1. When I click submit, it's going to enter me into this workflow. And this is where I get the option to configure a virtual agent if I have one. And in this case, I do. But if you don't, this option does not appear. And next, I'm going to configure my tab. And this is where I get the option to specify my tab name. And in this case, I'm going to select Employee Center. Oops, looks like it's missing an option here. Geez, looks like everything that could go wrong is going wrong today.
That's okay. Live demos are almost like that, so it's okay.
Thank you, Pooja. I'll try this one more time. Directory tenant ID. Oh, I think it's because I don't have this installed. That's why. Okay, this makes sense. So unfortunately, because my instance is not connecting to my Microsoft tenant for whatever reason, I'm going to just try to quickly log out and then log back in and see if that reboots things. But if not, I may have to just switch completely over to the screenshot that I took earlier.
And feel free, people on the call, to post your questions in Q&A. We have a few marked for live, answering live, and we will, as soon as Passive rolls forward with the demo, we will take those questions.
Yeah, and I'm just going to try another browser just in case that might make the difference.
Yeah, and meanwhile, while you are trying to test, there there are questions that are on what are the roles required on each side. I think you're going to cover it a little later, but we can talk about that as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And
oh, look at that. We are in luck. So I'm going to select my account here, and this should establish connection between the two platforms. And you can see, as I mentioned in the screenshots earlier, that now the two platforms are connected. So why don't I try and move back over here where I was starting to create that manifest file. I will have to start over. There we go. Creating a new manifest file so that I can get that application ID auto-populated for this. Okay. Okay, live demo. All right, so kind of moving on, picking up where we left off, I started by creating a manifest file. I populated the generic information, and really that's for your own purposes so you can understand what the manifest file is. There's an option to configure the virtual agent, and now I'm moving on to the configure tab. And this is the option to say when I log into the Employee Center experience from Microsoft Teams, there's going to be a tab for me. This is where I get to give it a name. And I like to give it Employee Center, but you might have more creative names for your company, that you want to refer to the Employee Center Hub app as. Okay, so I'm going to click Next. And it's going to prompt me to download the manifest file. And as I'm waiting for this to render, I'll just take a look at some questions here. Oh, it looks like it's rendered. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to download this manifest file. And you can see that it's downloaded here. So let me move back to the presentation. We started off by connecting the two platforms together. And we just completed this workflow of downloading the ServiceNow generated manifest. Now at this stage, I'm going to upload the manifest file into Microsoft Teams. So let me show you what that experience is like. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to navigate to admin.teams.microsoft.com, and it's going to create this experience for me. And I'm going to navigate to manage apps. And here I'm going to upload a new app. But since I've done this before, you can see that I already have ServiceNow for Teams uploaded. And so instead, what I'm going to do is just simply click on this option, and I'm going to upload a file. I'm going to select the file that I just generated. And you can see it's now uploaded here. Excellent. Now I've uploaded the file into Microsoft Teams. What I'd like to do is make sure that it's available on every employee's Teams instance. So to do that, I'm going to navigate to set up policies. And I'm going to click on the global org-wide default off policy. And over here, I need to make sure that the ServiceNow for Microsoft Teams app appears as a pinned app inside of Microsoft Teams. So first, I'm going to add apps, and I'm just going to simply search for ServiceNow and select the ServiceNow for Teams app that appears here and add it. I'm going to click Save. And then to complete this step, I'm going to go to the pinned apps and simply add it there. Click save, and I'm all done here. Now, to get this to appear in Microsoft Teams, I need to log out and log back in. So let me just quickly do that, and we can complete this workflow. All right, so I refreshed my instance, and now what I'm going to do is click on this little 9-box option here, navigate to Microsoft Teams, and I will show you the Employee Center inside of Microsoft Teams. So as you can see, I now have a pinned application here called ServiceNow. And when I click on it, it takes me to Employee Center. And here's where you can see there are 3 or 4 options. First is there's a chat option. And this is optionally where you get to interact with the virtual agent. And I can talk to the virtual agent by saying hi to it or ask for information. It's also the place where I receive notification. So you can see earlier on March 27th, there was a major incident where email server was down. And as an employee here, I get that notification. In this case, I was an agent helping with that. And so I got a notification saying to come in and start to help out the team to bring the email server back up. I can also click on the Employee Center tab here. And this is where I get the same great Employee Center experience just embedded inside of Microsoft Teams. Let me take a look at some, as the Employee Center here is loading, I can see now that I can interact with the Employee Center, and I can check out different policies like laptop refresh, parental leave, and just interact with the same great experience. I can come here and I can approve things that have been sent to me. It's just a great experience because I can start a conversation with someone over here and then complete a workflow that they may have directly inside of Employee Center. It's really an awesome experience. Let me pause here. I'm going to go back to the presentation just to wrap up what we just saw. So we first started off by connecting Teams and ServiceNow. Then we downloaded a ServiceNow generated manifest, and then we uploaded that manifest into Microsoft Teams. So that was the workflow. Let me pause and see if there are any questions that I can answer live.
Thanks, Asif. That was good, and I'm glad that we could demonstrate it live. So thank you for that. There are a couple of questions that I think we can take at this time. One is, what is the difference between the conversational interfaces app versus ServiceNow for Teams apps?
That's a great question. So when we had first started our journey with integrating with Microsoft, we started off with the virtual agent, and slowly but surely we started to onboard more applications. And so what you're seeing is our Employee Center app, which is front and center, now becoming our main application that we want to include in the Teams integration. And we are making a concerted effort to make a single manifest that could be shared with that could be uploaded into the Microsoft Teams integration. So I guess another way of saying this is that if you just had the virtual agent and you had later plans to deploying Employee Center, you can deploy the virtual agent on Microsoft Teams ahead of Employee Center. And once you are ready for Employee Center, you can deploy the two together using the single manifest.
So correct me, Asif, if I'm wrong. What you're saying is conversational interfaces with Microsoft Teams will give you VA on Teams only. But if you're looking for VA and Employee Center, it will be ServiceNow for Teams application.
That's correct. Yep.
Awesome. So the other question which was tied with this was, let's say we do have a conversational integration with Microsoft Teams installed, and now we want to get Employee Center. Like what would my steps be? Because we want to be careful that they don't mess up their VA configuration on Teams.
Yeah, this is a great question. So you will want to, it's perfectly possible to have two manifest files uploaded into the Teams application. Now, why you don't want to do this is because you might confuse your employees on where to go for what. And so, but my recommendation is to combine Employee Center and Virtual Agent in the same way that I demoed, and use that as the single manifest file that all your employees are going to interact with.
So essentially you have to recreate the manifest file and upload it and replace the old one?
That's correct.
Okay. So for those who asked questions related to this, please feel free to raise your hand and we can take any follow-up questions, but hopefully this was clear. The other set of questions that I'm seeing is just asking for clarity on which account we do the integration with. Is it the sysadmin account? Like if you could just talk about the account as well as maybe tie in the roles required for doing this will be helpful.
Absolutely. Why don't I skip ahead to another slide real quick and just talk a little bit about the prerequisites, which includes the roles and the accounts that you want to configure. So from a core plugin perspective, you'll just need the Microsoft Integrations Core installed in your instance. From a Microsoft roles perspective, what I recommend typically is that you create a new user for this integration. And I chose the name of Now Microsoft Integration just for the sake of this demo, just so that I can remember that this user is responsible for this integration. I think it's nice to have that because you might end up using the same user for multiple. If you don't have a dedicated user like I do, you might get confused and forget what this user is really integrating. From a roles perspective, it's an either. You either give it global admin, which might be too much, depending on how your security team looks at it. In which case, you might just want to use the combination, and you need both Teams Administrator and Application Administrator to complete this integration. Okay, so that's what you need from a Microsoft perspective. Now you need a corresponding ServiceNow user role as well. And that same user needs to have either admin or external app install admin. What's common to both of these are the email address so that you can complete that, so that the application knows that the user with the name of Now Microsoft Integration is the same user as Now Microsoft Integration over here inside of ServiceNow.
Awesome. That's helpful, Asif. Should we take a couple more questions before we move forward?
Yes, we can.
So one is, it's probably a customization or versus configuration question. Can you default the landing to Employee Center tab rather than chat?
Oh, that's a very good question. I believe that is customization. Out of the box, it's not supported. And what I would recommend is to go onto the community site and ask that question, because we have a really stellar community and a lot of experts that are actively monitoring that and should hopefully come back to you with a recommendation.
Sounds good. So for those who are asking that question, please make sure you post your question on the community, and I'm pretty sure someone would have figured how to do that. Another question is, can we not activate virtual agent in the beginning and activate it in the later stage? I believe the answer is yes, but anything you want to talk about?
That's correct. Yes, the virtual agent step in the manifest generation flow is optional. And now it just so happens that my instance had the virtual agent already set up. And so it gave me that option to configure it. But if you don't have the virtual agent set up, you can choose not to and enable it as part of that manifest generation workflow.
Awesome. We do have a hand raised, and I have allowed you to talk, so feel free to talk. I think it's Sandy. Could just unmute and ask. Okay. Maybe there are some issues on that, but that's okay. We can keep going forward. Thank you so much, Asif.
Okay, absolutely. So what I wanted to do was wrap up this section with a couple of best practices. And I want to start off first by saying that that when you take on this integration, it really is like a 30-minute at most exercise. As you can see from the demo, it did not take a lot of time to get this thing up and running. Now, what will take time is making sure that your various stakeholders and key players are really aligned and working on this. And so what I emphasize is that once you start this, or if you're very interested in this, just be very good with communication. Make sure that if you're not the ServiceNow owner, make sure that the ServiceNow owner and the Microsoft owner are on the same page and aware of what you are wanting to complete. And there will likely be additional key players that you need to bring into this effort as well. And there's going to be an admin or two. It will likely be the ServiceNow admin and the Microsoft admin, and possibly a technical architect. But rest assured that ServiceNow and Microsoft co-created this integration. We're aware and we work together to make sure that the two platforms are talking to each other. And so everything we've done was very intentional, and you have the benefit of knowing that ServiceNow runs on, that is integrated with Microsoft Teams, that is our Now and Now team has, as well as Microsoft team. Microsoft runs ServiceNow the same way we run ServiceNow. And so it's great to know that the two big companies have adopted this integration, are totally comfortable with everything that is required during this setup. Now, we'd also emphasize that you communicate and follow up. You're going to get lots of questions, or you might get lots of questions from either the Microsoft admin or technical architect. Make sure to communicate them and document everything that they're asking for. And we have a security white paper just in case they want additional clarity that should answer a lot of the questions. But if it doesn't, please leave a comment. You know, that's what it's for. And we want to be able to benefit from everyone's requirements. So please navigate to the security white paper, and I'll link you to that in just a bit. And then if it doesn't answer everything, just leave a question there. So kind of recommendations on how to drive alignment. You know, I recommend that you start a Teams discussion with the key players, like I mentioned, schedule meetings with them to review the instructions and the implementation steps that I just covered with you. And then document all those follow-up items so that everybody is aware of what is being asked for and complete their tasks accordingly. You're going to need to create roles and provision security to those roles. And you just need to make sure that people are doing that job. As I shared earlier, the requirements that you're going to want to communicate are as follows. I'll skip going over this one more time just because we've seen it already. And you'll have access to this on community through this presentation, but also there are articles that I can share with you as well that cover these same requirements. So helpful resources. Everything that I've covered with you today is documented on community. There's a 3 simple step article that we've written that helps you integrate Microsoft Teams and ServiceNow. And then an article that helps you generate the manifest, which is part 1 of 2 for Employee Center. And then part 2 is going through the steps of uploading that manifest and configuring it there so that employees can see it. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a security FAQs white paper as well that helps answer a lot of common questions that we've heard from customers in the past. And then 5 is just a link to our product docs that has more detailed step by step for less common implementations, I should say. And so with that, I just want to say thank you, and maybe we can spend some time doing some more Q&A, Pooja?
Yep, absolutely. There's a ton of questions. The Q&A panel is on fire. Let's start with a follow-up question that we have from one of the previous set of questions that we were discussing. So when we do upload or change the manifest, will that require the application on the team site to be also updated?
Yes. And so you will, depending on how you set up your virtual agent the first time, it may just be a cleaner configuration to just deactivate that application and create a new application.
Okay, thank you. There are a couple of questions which are around single tenant versus multi-tenant and migrating from single tenant to multi-tenant. Just so everyone in the audience is clear, could you talk about those two setup systems and what's our recommendation around it?
Yes. So there are multiple ways to configure the ServiceNow for Microsoft Teams integration. You can have a single ServiceNow instance and multiple Microsoft Teams instances, in which case we call that the multi-tenant configuration. That is no different than what we just walked through. You just need to follow additional steps on our product docs to complete that workflow. It is a less common implementation setup from what I've seen, which if you would like help with that, I'm not sure who asked the question, but please stop by our community site for Microsoft Teams and ask the question if you'd like more resources there. But for more common implementations, it is that one-to-one of I have a single Microsoft tenant and a single ServiceNow tenant, in which case this flow is very, very straightforward.
Perfect. That brings me to the next set of questions that people are asking. So I do have a single Microsoft tenant, and they are asking, how do I test everything in a sub-prod environment and move to prod? Is there a way to, what's the best practice around it?
Yeah, so I think the great part about this is that it's purely an integration at the end of the day. And you can test the integration in your sub-prod instance. And it really just means pointing your sub-prod ServiceNow instance to whatever instance of Microsoft Teams you want to have set up. And I've had plenty of customers do that, test it out, become comfortable with the experience, and then choose to deploy it in production. Now you can phase that production rollout. I think a common way of doing that is to bypass that configuration step where you make Employee Center a pinned app, just so that you can ensure that the Employee Center app experience is working as you intend in production. Once you're comfortable with that, then you can choose to do the pinned app configuration so that all employees see the Employee Center app.
Awesome. Thanks, Asif. If there are any follow-ups on this, please feel free to ask. The other last few questions that I can see we can probably take up live is when we are from an integration user perspective, does it require multi-factor authentication? Is there a way to set up without the multi-factor authentication?
When you do the setup?
That's what I think. I'm not too sure on the question, but that's what it is about, the need for having multi-factor authentication on the Microsoft side to do the integration.
I believe so. I just so happen to be using Microsoft's multi-factor authenticator for this. But I do believe that as you have, if your Teams admin doesn't require it, then you'll likely not need it when you do the integration itself.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's see what additional questions there are. One question that I've heard other people also say, and it's kind of coming in another question in the Q&A panel, is often the roles that we require from Microsoft side are pretty high up, and they ask a lot of questions, and like the permissions required, and there is not like, is there any documentation that you can share with the group here, or any best practices that you would recommend to work better with Microsoft admins? Because I think everyone on the call here would be the ServiceNow side, and they have to go and then work with Microsoft side. So any additional best practices on that?
Yes, I've talked to a few customers about this, and they've had that same experience, and that's why the emphasis of first and foremost, communicate, communicate, and communicate. When you start this, where I've seen it go really well is when the ServiceNow owner has engaged the Microsoft owner from the onset and has shared plenty of collateral, let me go here, have shown these documents, and then specifically the FAQs and the product documentation. Once they see the roles and the requests in the product docs, it tends to bring down the anxiety from those teams admins. But you also have to understand their perspective, right? So when they're asked to simply create a user and give them admin rights, they do get a little, their anxiety levels go up. And it's kind of like hey, I need you to do this last minute request, and they don't typically understand all the context that the requester has. So when they get that support up front, it tends to make for a smoother implementation. And you can get those questions and documented and follow-ups from the onset. That way they know what to do, and they're just waiting for additional information. And so really the recommendation is to engage them early and make sure that they're aligned, and then communicate and do those follow-ups. That's where the bulk of the work is. And it's really not a lot once you think about that, once they become an advocate for this integration, as opposed to a dependency to the integration. And I say that because they're wanting the Microsoft Teams product that they own to be adopted more as well. So anything that gives them more and more adoption, they're very happy to hear about. So if you turn them into an advocate early on, as opposed to a dependency later on, they're much more easier to, you'll have a more smoother implementation.
Awesome. Thanks, Asif. Another question that we are seeing, which is also pretty interesting, is do we have any recommended sequencing? Like should customers wait to be on Employee Center or Virtual Agent and then integrate? What is there a path that you would recommend?
I recommend that you should move into, I put myself in the employee's shoes, right? And as the owner, as an employee, and I need service, if I can get some immediate benefit, I will be better off. And so my recommendation is to advocate for your employees as much as you can, at the expense of maybe you have to change some things down the road. And to me, that is purely from the sake of, hey, we want employees to be more productive, and their productivity gains will always surpass any incremental or change of work that we need to do later on down the road. So if you have virtual agent and it's already up and running, move it into Teams. And then when you're ready for Employee Center and the virtual agent, do that work and communicate the change. But your employees will be happy because they get more and more over time. And you get feedback on what's working and what's not working.
Awesome. Thanks, Asif. And I just want to add that, even if you have not deployed Employee Center right now, you can have your current portal embedded in Teams. And once you're ready with Employee Center, you can point it to Employee Center in Teams. So that's possible as well. And there were a couple of questions on licensing. So I'm just going to say you don't need EC Pro license for this. Even Employee Center Standard can be integrated with Microsoft Teams. One more question and then we can just close. This is just, can we change the look and feel for Employee Center on the Teams? And Asif, I'll give my perspective and you can add to it. We recommend against doing that. Like you would want to have a consistent look and feel as you would have in your portal experience that you would integrate in your Teams experience. So you don't want to create a whole different experience. And that's the whole point of being an embedded portal, essentially. But I don't know, Asif, if you have ever encountered this question from other questions and other customers, and if you've seen other approaches work better.
I think you're right about that. Like consistency between the portal view and the Teams view is key so that you create that mental map between the experiences. We've heard of customers wanting to change the name of the application so it doesn't say ServiceNow for Microsoft Teams. I think that's innocent enough, and maybe they want to call it something a little bit more fun, more in line with the culture of the company they work for. I don't think there's anything wrong with changing the name of that, the name of the application. So, I think use that as your guiding principle, in my opinion, is try to figure out how to align mental models as much as possible, but then don't kill the spirit of having fun with this as well.
Awesome. With that, thank you so much, Asif, and thank you everyone on the call. I hope this was helpful. And we'll be back again next month with another interesting topic. Have a good rest of your day.